granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Hello. I never thought I'd find myself defending Rachel Reeves, but I am doing it now. In a way. She is to blame for the trouble she's found herself in, but not quite for the reasons that are being given in a lot of hypocritical press. For instance, here they're showing Keir Starmer telling Boris Johnson off. Lawmakers can't be lawbreakers. Well, you see, the point is, you can be a lawbreaker if there are so many laws and they are so complicated and obscure that you are bound to break one of them sooner or later, however careful you are. And Rachel Reeves fell foul of some local housing regulations when she became Chancellor and moved out of her house in South London and into number 11 Downing Street, which most of you know is the place where the Chancellor of the Exchequer is supposed to live, next door to the Prime Minister, so they can have little chats late at night, I suppose. It seems what Ms. Reeves didn't get was something called a selective licence from the council. A selective licence is a recent law intended to control bad landlords, but that's the problem. There are more and more laws attempting to make life better and better for people who rent, and which are in fact making things worse and worse. And really the problem isn't that Reeves, or rather her estate agents, made a mistake, but that the law is there in the first place. And the problem with this government, and indeed with all of our governments since the beginning of the last century, is that there are too many laws, all made with the best of intentions and all making life an absolute minefield for everyone, but especially for landlords. I'm Granniopteryx. Please like this video, please share it, please subscribe to my channel. Yes, that's what I have to tell you to do. YouTube isn't being very good about keeping subscriptions. So yeah, please, if you're on YouTube, please check that you still are subscribed. And if you want to contribute financially to my channel, well, all the links are in the description. Right, let's talk about too many laws. Okay, so there are two opposite ends of opinion here. This one says, it may be just me, but I'd like to feel the Chancellor of the Exchequer had better things to spend her time doing than personally checking whether the advice she'd received regarding whether she needed a licence to rent out her old house was correct. Yeah, I mean, I think this person is wrong, but where I think the Chancellor of the Exchequer has fallen down is not that she isn't an expert on rental law, but that the rental law is there in the first place. And she, as part of the government, is responsible for that. Here we have someone else saying the independent advisor might have cleared her, but the public hasn't. And then this person quotes Rachel Reeves in 22 saying that the British public deserve politicians who know the rules apply to them. They deserve politicians who hold themselves to the highest standards. They deserve politicians who put our country first. They will always get that from Keir Starmer and from Labour. Well, the last two things, the last thing here is a total lie. And yes, we deserve politicians who put our country first, and that's something else that her government isn't doing. But the fact is that nobody can know the intricacies of the law anymore. And that means that the intricacies of the law are the preserve of very rich people who can get, fancy accountants and various sorts of legal experts to help them. But the ordinary people, they are going to be far worse treated by this sort of thing than somebody like Rachel Reeves. And even with all her contacts and experts, she still fell foul of the law. She says she made an inadvertent mistake. Well, here's the grammar Nazi again. Yeah. And a mistake is always inadvertent unless she's talking about a political mistake, which is not. So anyway, she has since applied for the licence. And, of course, all the opposition parties are making hay. They're making a big hypocritical fuss about it, just like they're making a big hypocritical fuss about a comment made by the Reform Party's Sarah Pochin, if that's how you pronounce her name. She made a comment about ethnic representation in television adverts, and suddenly there's big fuss. Oh, she's a racist. Well, now a lot of people are saying that Rachel Reeves is cheating. And she wasn't. It was a genuine mistake. Let's get back to that. What happened was that she turned over the renting of her house to an estate agent. And the estate agent changed staff, apparently, during the rental setup. At least that's the story we're being given. And the licence application sort of fell behind the filing cabinet. The point is that when it comes to owning property, recent laws about being a landlord, and I've spoken about this before, are piling up to such an extent that the small ones, the small landlords, are being driven out. And the only landlords that are going to be left, and this is something I am absolutely confidently predicting, the only landlords who will be left are going to be huge soulless corporations like BlackRock or something like that, which tenants will find impossible to fight, and they'll get away with all sorts of nasty behaviour. But they'll be too big to be allowed to fail. And this will make things a lot worse for anyone who needs to rent a property than the situation now. And yet our governments are still piling on the laws. There's a lot of ecological laws going through now, which, people are not renting anymore. And while Rachel Reeves recently got caught by an administrative mistake, because she's who she is, she got away with it because people understand that it was just a mistake. But, I'm absolutely certain that a little fish who gets caught in the same sort of trap would probably be driven to the wall, driven to suicide by the full force of the law coming down on his head. The punishment for failure to get a licence is just awful. It's a criminal offence for a start, and it has an unlimited fine if the courts decided to impose huge amount of money. As well, there's a civil penalty of up to £30,000, and there's a confiscation of all the rent up to the time of getting the licence. So if do you think that someone like, the local plumber who forgot to get a licence, who didn't know about it, and he was just renting out his late mother's flat, do you think he'd get the same sort of sympathy from the courts that Ms. Reeves is getting? I very much doubt it. And that's where the problems are. It's all very well, saying, we've got to stop landlords from gouging tenants. But what you're doing is you're stopping people from taking in tenants in the first place. And that's going to reduce the housing stock. And so the rental stock. So then what's going to happen is, as I say, big companies who little people can't talk back to are going to be taking over the rental market. I don't know whether anyone knows about Friedrich Hayek. He was Austrian, but he was a British economist or philosopher, and he wrote a book in 1944 called The Road to Serfdom, and it was all about how government is making slaves of us all bit by bit, and with the best of intentions. He said you can't have a reasonable rule of law if there are so many laws that it's impossible to keep track of them all. And Hayek wasn't the first to point that out. Tacitus, first century Rome, was complaining about this. So it's not as if we don't know that too many laws mean too many opportunities to be caught out in mistakes. And yet we still haven't learnt, have we? And especially socialist governments, they are particularly keen on making more laws. And it's all out of their ability or their inability to project their feelings of virtue into the future disasters that these feelings of virtues are going to be causing. All right, well, yeah, that's it. There's no point in talking sense to this government. An honest mistake, which is what Reeves made, would be a terrible criminal offence if I made it. Same law, but I wouldn't get the same consideration. Well, that's why people like me are not renting. And I heard somebody recently who actually said, if you're renting, get out of it as soon as you can, because it's not worth it. And here we have a good example of why it isn't worth it. Okay, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.